Like, about this talk, unfortunately, we couldn't do this physically. If this was a physical session, that would be amazing. But with the current situation, we may have to restrict our some of the programs, but that's okay. Okay, so let me share the screen. I hope you can see my screen properly.
Yes, Dr. Pasan, we can see you.
Yes, and I apologize. I actually not sure. I'm actually not sure about the power cut schedule today. So if there's a power failure, just be patient and until we resolve something. But until that, let's continue with the talk today. Okay. So thank you for inviting me again. And when Temia asked me to deliver a speech in front of you guys, I was thinking about a topic and what other topic I can suggest beyond this one at this particular moment. This is very critical at this moment. So everybody is talking about what's happening to our economy and what's going to happen next week, next month. So we are not sure about what's happening. So sort of a rebuilding phase for us. There are certain unfortunate things that we have to keep aside. But in this particular discussion today, I'm trying to focus on things that chemical and process engineers can do during these troubled times. So as you guys mentioned, I'm Dr. Pasan Chinthana Bandara, and I hope most of the people here are from Peradeniya. So hello, Pera. And this is one of the last memories I have from Pera when I was working as a demonstrator. For those who have stayed in Nishmi, there's a small cliff next to the Nishmi Hall. If you climb that hill, you can see the faculty from a different direction. It's the picture is that one. But that's actually not the last time I visited the Peradeniya University. It was actually in 2018 because I actually went back my memory lane when Temia contacted. That's I guess it's a normal thing to do. I as he mentioned, I was actually a student from E08 batch, and I graduated in 2013. And when I went to higher studies, my plan A was to come to your department as an academic someday. That was my plan A. So even in 2018, that was my plan A. But things went in different directions. Suddenly, a plan B or C came into light, and then I joined University of Sri Lanka as an academic. After I returned Sri Lanka exactly 3 years and 1 day ago, I came to Sri Lanka after completing my PhD. So, but anyway, I still, I mean, I don't know any other word to use, but I love Pera, and I love that particular vibe, and I love what the department has taught me throughout those 4 years, actually 5 years, if you count the time that I worked as a demonstrator. So it was a nice time, and probably this whole discussion would be pretty much like a sort of like a flashback for me as well. Okay, this a little bit about myself. I currently work as a senior lecturer at the Department of Biosystems Technology, Faculty of Technology, University of Sri Lanka. I mainly deliver lectures related to food processing technology. So I apologize. Actually, most of the examples that I take today might be from food processing industry, but bear with me because that's my job. And I did my bachelor's from your department and I graduated in 2013. And I did my doctor's in environmental engineering, and I did my PhD in University of Houston in Texas, USA. Actually, I got the job here based on my process engineering background, and that's why I'm delivering courses that are related to food processing basically. Um, so some of the pictures that I had to visit while I was doing while I was preparing the presentation. So before we go into the actual talk today, just bear with me for a second. This is actually some of the pictures taken when we were students. This was actually our department welcome. I don't know if you guys still visit this particular building because you have a nice building at this moment. I think in our third year and fourth year, we had the luxury to visit that new building. I think the first floor was, I mean, what do you call it? Ground floor was finished by then. But apart from that, we mainly stayed. We did practicals, everything in the building that we had next to the civil labs. There's a picture from our department welcome. Some of the guys, some of them are in different countries as well. This is a picture from NGEX that was actually held in 2010. We just finished our first year and we just joined the department as chemical and process engineering batch, and then we suddenly had to participate in this exhibition. It was a nice experience, and this is some of the pictures that I have. I may have some other really nice pictures, but unfortunately I don't have access to some of my hard drives. But this is when we were running the student body. So I don't know if you guys know, it was actually previously the department was named as chemical engineering. Then at some point they changed it to chemical and process engineering. So so I guess the student body was named Chemical Engineering Student Society something, and then people, I don't know if it was a serious abbreviation, or I'm not sure if they try to tease us, but they were calling the student body as chess or something. And then during our times we came up with the name Scapes, and that how the term Scapes come into use. And now we are happy that uh, the generations that followed us have done tremendous job regarding this continuous activities done by a student body. It's really nice to see these things, and it's really happy to be part of it at some point. Okay, there are some stories with these pictures, but I will skip these things since we need to get to the actual talk, and this is finally the last day of lectures that we went. This is actually in front of the new building. If you can recognize, this is like the steps of that ground floor. And this is our batch. I think it was around 20 students from E08 batch, and then a couple of students from previous batches who finished with us. And two of the guys, they are not in the picture. Probably they were doing interviews or something on that day, but it's very nice. And I hope at least you have seen some of the guys still hanging in the faculty. Okay. Okay, let's get to the topic today. But before we go into the actual topic, let's see why we need to discuss about something like this today. So I hope at some point of your previous 2-3 weeks, you have been to one of these queues, at least one of these queues. Could be gas, it could be petrol, gasoline, kerosene, whatever, milk powder, I don't know. So this is something that we have never experienced in our life. I was born in 1989, and probably even our younger generations, I don't think we have seen something like this in our life. So this is actually a sure sign of something wrong in this country. And so it wasn't something that happened suddenly, that when I think it was your announcer when he mentioned that it was like a sudden thing. No, it's not. It's actually a disaster I was in preparation for at least 10-15 years, maybe more than that. So these are some figures. This will not tell you the clear picture. There are other factors that you need to consider what brought us here. But some of the things that we were kept collecting debt on us, that could be from international partners, from national banks and all those things, but we were collecting debts, and then when there was a gap of income and expenses, what we did, we take more debts. We took more loans, and then finally there was a pressure point that has to be released. And it is actually now we are seeing this kind of reactions. Now we are seeing this kind of like queues and all those things. But the problem was there since so many time. Like if you even look at this particular diagram, like our foreign reserves were like up and down during this previous decade or so. And then if you think about the situation in 2014 and 2015, there was a depletion. So if somebody was careful enough, and I hope the rulers of those times, they knew what's happening, and they didn't actually told the responsible people to take actions. Actually, they were the responsible person, but I don't expect the rulers to know everything to do. They at least should go to some experts and see what we should do, but they only thought about their power. And people didn't know about these things because it wasn't until recent incident that happened, especially with shortages of these uh, fuels and all those things, that only people understood there's a huge problem. But still, I don't think many of us haven't seen the future clear enough, and we don't know what the future will bring us. So we actually don't know what and how bad will this, whatever the depletion will become. So it's very unfortunate why we are here, but it's even unfortunate that we don't know what will happen in the next week or next month. There is no clear planning, and we don't see a good sort of leadership that is telling us what we should do to recover this one. There are signs here and there. We will discuss those things later, but in general, we don't have that kind of a leadership. So in that sense, professions like engineers, especially chemical and process engineers, they will have to do things that 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 actually occupies their knowledge, and that actually occupies their talents in these kind of situations. That's why we are discussing this topic today. Okay, so what led us here? Some of the things that I consider uh, are reason for this particular situation, especially the development policies that are very, very disorganized. Some development here, some development there. There's no like a national plan of doing things. So if there is a politician from one side of the country, he's thinking about the development in that part of the country, not the entire country. So there is no particular system in that sense. You have some development here and there, but that doesn't add in actually. So sometimes when you visit a city, there might be some buildings and some roads and all that, but it doesn't add up to create and sort of have a positive influence on the economy. So that was one of the problems. And then inconsistent tax policies. Usually still we try to create like uh, we try to induce tax on like people who are actually doing very hard on their lives, but we don't usually tax the people who are wealthy. We always give them tax cuts, tax releases, and all those kind of things. And when there is a government change, they always change these policies. So there is no consistent income in terms of taxes. We have a lot of political influences in top level, and also we have to blame the political illiteracy of the people as well, because people should read what their leaders are doing, So I mean, you don't trust your own friends, or you don't trust your own relations, and why you should trust some of the politicians that you don't even know, because sometimes they let you, I mean, they make you do things, they make you vote for them, but you don't even realize that they are actually the culprits behind all these stuff. So these kind of political illiteracy has led us here. And the corruption, of course, misuse of public resources, that's a huge threat. Even though we get support from other parties like IMF, we still don't know what the corruption will do, because the corrupted parties are still at power. And maybe even in the next election, they will also come to that same places. So poor human resource management, miscommunication, because as I mentioned earlier, that we didn't know about some of these stuff in the beginning, but I'm pretty sure the rulers knew what was happening. The things were depleting, they knew it, but they didn't really communicated it. And on top of that, all these things lead to one thing: we were not unsustainable. I mean, we were unsustainable because we never thought about sustaining our ability to extended time periods. We always thought about our lifestyles that are so happy for us, and we were thinking about the happiness of that particular moment, but we never thought about the future. Our rulers didn't think about the future; they were only thinking about the power, and even this people of this country, they never thought about the future of the country. So these everything in mixture brought us this particular situation, and now we are at one of the worst crises that we have seen. And so what we are experiencing is just not a single crisis; it's actually a mixture of crises. So that's one of the unfortunate things that we have to accept for some reason. Of course, the governments and rulers, they are they're directly responsible. There's no argument on that. But let's see how and what we can do in step by step. So even though this, as I mentioned, like those hidden depletions were available to see for general public, mainly because of this shortages of goods, some of the power sources. Like we never thought about there is a huge crisis in cooking fuel. That's so unfortunate, because we were going up the energy ladder, and suddenly now we have to go back to the ancient times and use firewood. So that's very unfortunate. Like the world is moving forward, and then we have to find techniques that are going backwards. So that's very, very unfortunate. Okay, anyway, now I mentioned that this is actually a cluster of crisis that is sort of like everything come in together. Now we for sure we know that we have already facing an economic crisis. That's why we are already like hyped up. But if you think about it, um, and we already seeing that political crisis is already happening, that since like 2-3 months before now, we see that a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions in the parliament. So all these political crises, it's now already happening. So what is next? Probably the food crisis. Now everybody's talking about what could happen with the food supplies. It's already depleting. The prices are going up crazy. Like if you buy something this week, next week when you buy it, it's like 100-200 rupees increased. And the food inflation, I'm not exactly sure the number at this moment, but it's actually going towards hyperinflation. So we are in verge, we are sort of like really close to that food crisis. So that's one thing. And also this stupid agricultural policy changes and led another another sort of like complexity to the problem. And if you listen to some of the discussions that some of the agricultural sector experts do, it's really unfortunate, because our rulers didn't have time to listen to us, but listen to them. And then suddenly some of the new ministers, they were talking to those experts like 2 days ago. But I mean, how neglectful that someone can be like that. I mean, you should talk to experts, because before you take a decision like that, like a very critical policy change. If you look at some of the food crises that happened in the history, there can be different reasons. There can be like natural disasters, which is out of control. I mean, if there's a drought, you cannot control it. It's a natural disaster. But there are some food crises that happen in the history that it was caused by some stupid decisions of the rulers. And in some way, we are heading a situation like that. So that's very dangerous. And then the social crisis, because now you're facing an economic crisis. Even for now, that if you see some of the firms they're closing down, and there is a situation that they have to lay off some of the workers, so the jobs can be lost for some people. They might cut down their workforce, so that will actually bring down the unemployment. So that's again going to be a social crisis. And then the worst of all, the humanitarian crisis. We actually, again, not sure what's happening, because we know that there is a shortage of medical supplies and all that. So that means that we are also seeing some of this kind of a crisis in our horizon. So everything is like unprecedented. We cannot predict. I mean, we can predict, but we cannot exactly say what would be the extent of these crises. But the only thing that I can say is that if you trigger one of these crises, the others can be triggered as well. So now we have the economic crisis, it triggered the political crisis. Now the food crisis is already happening, and then the rest actually can come after that. Okay, so we might be heading to a very challenging future. I would put it like that. Okay. So this is what actually happened. This is the situation in the country since, I don't know, maybe like 6, 7, 8 weeks. This is what happening. Now it's a little bit calmed down, but time to time there are episodes of these kinds of activities. Fights, when fight came to the streets, and these things can lead to other things. Like this is actually basically the symptoms of the social crisis happening right in front of us. So this is actually, now I'm not an economist, okay? I'm just a chemical and process engineer turned into a lecturer, and I'm doing my job. But this guy is actually an economist. He has a PhD in economy. So this person is actually has shouldered to one of the difficult tasks, probably that this could be the most difficult task he ever faced in his life, because some of the things that he is mentioning right here is actually very critical to us. Because for a person from now, you guys are going to you might be having like very fruitful dreams about going into industry and working as a chemical and process engineer. But if you think about these process industries, and if you think about the news from those processing industries, that is not actually a good news. So in that sense, we may have to, I don't know, because in his own words, if the country is facing an economic contraction, each individual of us, it doesn't matter, it could be a student, it could be a lecturer, it could be any other person in the country, they may have to contract their economy as well. That's again very unfortunate, because some of us were actually helping the economy, and some of us were actually willing to help the economy after your graduation or something, but still you have to sacrifice your dreams and other things because of this contraction. So it's very bad in that sense. And many of the industries, they are facing raw material shortages. And what you see in this price increments, especially in processed food and other items, consumer products, um, like every week there is some kind of a product that is going to be in the news. Sometimes it's milk powder, sometimes it's um, cheese, sometimes it's one time it was soap. Like, still I don't think we have realize that it's not just one product per week. I mean, it's everything that is going into be total chaos if we don't act carefully at this moment. And there is another thing that he mentioned, Dr. Nandalal. He clearly mentioned that historically we had a tendency to maintain an import dependent economy. So that was again a huge mistake that we did for a very long time. And what his suggestion is to overturn this burden is to shift to something like export oriented economy. He's actually right. This is some of the data from, we can go beyond this point, but let's start from something around like 2014. You still see the trend. We have spent on imports more than the exports. So there is a gap. Now imports, that means we have to spend money. Foreign exchange, we have to spend it. And exports, that's something we get from the market, get from the foreign countries. So there is a huge gap, and then our expenses are higher than our income. So then we have to find a way to match this gap. And what we did so far was getting loans. I mean, getting loan for a short time period, that was okay, but that was our long-term solution. And now we are here, and you don't have to think about what will happen in 2022. You can actually see what's happening, can cut down so many imports, but still, but there's one positive point that we need to take from here. Exports are bringing money into the country. So even at this point, even at this difficult time, people who are in the export business, they are bringing money. Okay. So if there are process industries that are actually working on exports, they are actually bringing dollars to this country. So they are helping the economy in a great extent. So that's somewhere we need to think. And that's somewhere that the CBSL governor thinks that we should go to think about an export-oriented economy. So that's a long-term project, actually. That's long-term, actually. You can start now, but it's actually a long-term process. And since I mentioned export oriented process industries, that means the demand for chemical and process engineers should be increased. The reason why I used should be because even though there are concepts, we don't know whether our rulers will implement these concepts or not. So again, there is an unhelpful situation. But let's see, let's be positive and let's think about how we can overturn this, whatever the stupid situation, and come out of this mess. How we can support as a profession to come out of this particular situation. When I say that, but I have to accept that most of the things that we need to get out of the major problem should come from government-led policy changes. That's true. And also they have to implement some of the national level things to come to assure this stability. Again, long-term, short-term, and medium. That's okay. That's totally understood. But every one of us has a particular role in this. And we also have to take some careful measures. And that should be done for at least 5-10 years. That is actually not my words, actually, again, the words of the governor of CBSL. I mean, we may have to work very focused for at least a decade to come out of this problem. Remember, the problem was happening for like 10-15 years, maybe more than that. So when we need to come out of it, then again, we have to spend a similar amount of time, if not a less amount of time, if the tides are okay for us. Otherwise, if we don't act rationally at this point, we may dip further into this chaos. If you look at countries like Haiti, Lebanon, we are, I mean, even Zimbabwe, we are seeing like examples of what's happening because of this problem. So we already have those historical examples, and we should not go into that position. We should, as a nation, as a country, as in every individual, we need to work on something that is useful, and something that would help our economy in some way. Okay. Now, the title of the talk today, Rebuilding Economy, Chemical and Process Engineering Chapter. So I think this actually entire effort is, if it's a book, I believe there should be a chapter about chemical and process engineering profession in there. Because if you think about the things that can be converted into export industries and the other things that would help the economy, uh, we as chemical and process engineers have a very clearly defined role in this particular chapter, particular process. So I believe there should be a chapter about us, but it doesn't mean that we can do this alone. There should be other chapters like other professions and other people who are in different kinds of expertise should come in together to rebuild this economy. But let's focus on something that we can contribute to. And I need to mention one thing that yeah, I'll come to that later, but let's talk about our workforce. So generally, if you consider the state universities, University of Peradeniya and University of Moratu are producing chemical and process engineers. I hope the numbers are updated, because I see when you look at when I look at your website, I see around 25 graduates per batch, and I think in university it's about 80. Probably it might be higher because the number shown in the website is actually from a very previous update. But let's say like more than 100 of chemical and process engineers coming out from the universities, and they join the workforce. The number might be very low, but if you think about the activities that they can do, or if you think about their responsibilities in the industry, that is actually a significant number. This can be upgraded. Yes, I still believe the number 25 in Peradeniya can be increased, maybe at least by 5-10. But I don't know if you are keeping like some sort of a ratio or something. But I don't know if I feel like you have more resources now to go beyond this number of 25. Because even in 2008 we had 20 students, so still it's hanging around a number like 25, maybe 30. But I think, but that's one way of solving it. But let's think about the number as it is, and let's think about the expertise that they have. You learn about many processes. You learn about heat and mass transfer. You learn about separation processes, different aspects of food engineering, biological process engineering, different type of reactions. And then material engineering. Then it comes to different kinds of chemical processes like polymer and different kinds of minerals and marine resources. And then you have other regions like energy, environment, different kinds of applications of environmental engineering. And then you guys already trained to be designers. You design plants, you design equipments, you design processes, products. So those are some key aspects or key talents you have. And then you have this specialization subjects like fluid mechanics, sustainable development, cleaner production, occupational health and safety. Those are very important in industrial context as well as like in these even in these troubled times. These are very important subjects that people should follow, and you guys have that ability. And in our time, we didn't have this management courses that much, so we mainly had those technical courses, and we had something called general electives and technical electives, where we had some of the management tech courses. But now it's good to see that some of your curriculums have subjects like management, economics, marketing, behavioral aspects of marketing. These kind of subjects are very important when you're going to the industry, because now you can blend your knowledge with some other things. And one of the things that I want to mention right here is, like, most of the time when we say chemical and process engineers, we think somebody who's going into a huge industry, huge processing industry, huge plant, and working under somebody. But with these kind of management subjects and all that, you guys are now equipped with the knowledge to start something on your own. It may not be a large scale industry, but could be a small or medium scale industry. But still, It's a chemical and process industry, and you own it. See how nice it is. And at this moment, it's the right moment to think in that direction, not like working under somebody or working under someone's rules or something like that, because this is an opportunity right now. Chaos is a ladder, actually. We are in chaos, and that's actually a ladder, and you should use that ladder to go to uh, heights that are never seen before in your profession. Okay, so these are some of the industry that you guys are in, chemical and process engineers. Or if you are still a student, when you graduate, you might be thinking about going into these kind of industries. So food processing industries. If you think about the raw material based, if you consider the raw material, you can say about dairy industries, agro product processing industries, beverage industries, rice, different kinds of cereals, spices and condiments, coconut. These kind of um, processing industries are actually in export business at this moment, even at this moment. So these industries will bring in dollars to the country. So that's directly connected to the economical aspects of this country. Petroleum industry. We'll talk about this petroleum industry because that's one of the best places you can have training, and that's one of the best places you can work in this country. But it's so unfortunate that we are not using that petroleum industry to its potential. So that's again, I feel like that's one way of not using our chemical and process engineering knowledge in this country, by not using the petroleum industry or the refinery to its actual potential. And that's something we need to discuss, and I have another slide about that. We will come to that later. And if you think about the natural resources we have, we can come up with different industries, like different materials and chemical oriented industries like cement, different kind of metals, polymers, rubber, ceramics, glass paints. These are the things that are already happening, and there's still potential for new industries to come in and act and join the export level businesses. Pharmaceutical industries, especially herbal medicines. So there is lot of potential. There is a huge market in India, but still we have recipes and we have all that. We have the expertise that we can still come up with something medium or large scale and compete with countries like India and other Asian countries for herbal medicine. We haven't exploited that potential to the maximum. So these are the things we need to understand, you need to understand at some point. Medical supplies, sometimes it's just bringing out something in bulk and then you package it here into small sizes and then you sell it. No, that's import, that's actually import oriented. No, it's not, it shouldn't be like that. It doesn't mean that you have to make everything in the country. At least you have to make something in bulk and then try to export it. So that's one way of thinking it. And there are I don't have to say apparel industry, it's already bringing us dollars, but the raw material shortage is actually a critical issue in the apparel industry at this moment. And if even if you have raw materials, the price of the raw material is high, and because of that there were news about some of the orders are going to other Asian countries that has cheap labor. So that's again create some issues. But these are the key industries that chemical and process engineers play a huge role. So if you're going to work in one of these industries, remember that you have a role in working tirelessly and bringing in dollars through these export level industries. And there's another I have to talk about research and development in many places, so I'm not going to touch it right now, but that's again one of the areas that people can actually help. So now I'm going to go through some of the examples and some of the opportunities that I see in the current situation. And if one of the things that I already mentioned, that don't think about the situation where you go into a huge plant and you're going to work under someone's rule. No, I'm not only saying that, but I'm only also saying the opportunities that you can create yourself, like creating your own industries and all that. So let's keep that in your mind, and let's try to discuss some of the opportunities that I feel like you can exploit at some point during this economy rebuilding phase of our country. Probably in the next, I'm talking about next 5-10 years of our country's history. Now, I'm not going to tell the name chemical and process engineer at all the time, but if you see this star, that means there is an opportunity that you can exploit. Okay, so that's one of the symbols. I know the chemical and process engineers, they like to work with symbols. They like to draw things in symbols. So I exploited that particular aspect. So if you see this star, and it means that there is an opportunity that you can grab. And the other thing that I wanted to clearly mention, that there's something special about chemical and process engineers. Maybe as students, you may still haven't seen this part, but if you think about it, if you clearly think about it, we have a sort of ability, we have trained to do something like this. If others see like a chaos or something, sometimes the other people will see a mess. There will be no connection between whatever the incidents happening, but chemical and process engineers have the ability to think about this process as a flow. You can actually break down this whole mess into different like unit operations, if I use the technical term, and then you have the ability to connect these things, connect those blocks, and come up with not only one answer, but maybe more answers that are very sound and that are very effective. That is something very unique to chemical and process engineers, especially for a process engineering aspect, because we are taught to draw process flow diagrams, and we are trained to think about processes as unit operations. So when we see a long process, we actually break it down to small pieces, unit operations. So bring that ideology out of your classrooms, out of your industries. Like everywhere you see a problem, uh, uh, others will see a huge mess, but the chemical and process engineers, they have the mindset to see this problem as a connection between many small items. And even not only that, you will also find a way out of this mess. Think about this, because this thinking philosophy will help you in many situations of your life, not only this particular economic situations. So I already mentioned that you're sort of like what sort of knowledge you gain from your university, especially based on your curriculums, but your expertise in design, process control, you optimize processes, and you know about resource recovery. It's not everything is going to be, I mean, it's not like everything going to be wasted. You usually use waste and try to use it in something else, something useful. So these things actually well known by chemical and process engineers. And also you train to think about sustainable development like no other specs of science and engineering streams that we have in Sri Lanka. So that's one of the key things, because we know that people talking about sustainable development, but they don't really get the essence of what is actually sustaining ability. But you guys really work on those concepts, how we can sustain the ability for an extended period of time. It could be industry, it could be in some other place, but that's one of the key qualities, expertise you have. So that's why you can actually contribute to the next phase of the economy. And the roles that or the examples that I'm going to tell you, that can be actually implemented in different levels. It could be national level, industrial level. If you are working in an industry, some of these things can be done within your industry, but some cases these are national level, so these things need like maybe policy changes, but you can actually work in like task forces, like presidential task forces, sometimes national committees. You can bring in your expertise into these kind of national level contributions. And universities have a huge role in everything of this. Like it's not like just teaching someone and sending out graduates. There's a huge role for universities and faculties to play in this next phase of our economical development. And even batch level and individual level, you can actually volunteer with some of the things that we have in sort of activities that happening in the next couple of years. There will be a lot of volunteering efforts, uh, again using your particular chemical and process engineering knowledge. So let's look at some key areas where you can contribute. And I already apologize for using a lot of slides about food and food related topics. So let's start with food security, because I already mentioned that we are now in the verge of a food crisis. Now, why it is important to think about the food crisis at food security at this point? Because we are trying to recover from an economical failure, and if we cannot actually even uh, assure the food security, that would actually be again a huge toll on the economic development. Because what we mean by food security is basically that every individual has an ability to access some, not some food, but adequate food, and also nutritious diet. Okay, the food should be enough for that person, and it also should give the required nutrition for that person. That when we call that we are meeting the food security requirements. Okay, so we are talking about it's not only feeding the mouth, but it's also feeding the workforce of this country. Okay, so that's indirectly actually helping the whatever the activities, economic activities happening in the country. So, and another thing is that we were importing so many food materials from other countries. That again something that we want to uh, avoid at this moment, because we are spending too much money on importation. So in that sense, trying to assure the food security using the available resources is must in this next phase of the economical development. So that's why food security assurance is one of the key things that we need to discuss, and that's one of the areas that you can actually help. So you may have heard this discussion about this planting or growing agricultural crops at this moment. I'm not going to go into details, but if you heard this whole discussion about growing manioc at your places, but why they are telling this, if you listen to some of the talks delivered by Professor Buddhi Marabe, I think he's from Peradeniya also. If you look at him and his colleagues, what they are talking right now is that they're talking about our staple food. It's something that actually can happen in next couple of months, because this is our traditionally used food, or the meal. We usually have a staple food, which is rice, and then served with like 3 to 5 curries dishes, and that's our main meal, and that's traditionally, and also many people are adhered to this kind of a meal. But now the problem is our staple food, the rice supply is not up to the level that we need. So we need to find, I mean, at least some of the people will have to find a new staple food. So manioca is actually a good choice in that sense. That's why they are asking to grow these kind of plants. It's not like to take away your attention from some other problems. It's just assuring the food security. It's as simple as that. And apart from those main meals, we are also consuming processed foods. That's actually important for us, because we chemical and process engineers, we help processing these foods like dairy, beverages, bakery, and confectionery. Now, I already mentioned that large scale industries, they are facing some raw material shortages, and of course they are increasing their prices like crazy. Like this week there is a new price, and maybe in 1 or 2 weeks there is another increased price. So there should be a limit. There will be a limit. There will be a limit that people will avoid taking this food, processed food at some point, because they simply can't afford it. So if that happens, there is a situation where large scale industries, they have to stop their production because it's not economical for them. So now the situation happens, now there will be opportunity for small and medium scale food manufacturers, because large scale industries, they go out of business. That's unfortunate, yes, but that's the situation. But now there is an opportunity for small and medium scale food manufacturers. So they should exploit it. They should use it. But I have to say, starting a new manufacturing industry, not only food, any manufacturing industry at this level could still be a challenge, because somebody has to invest money on starting something. But here are some tips, things that you need to understand when you're starting something new like that. So think you are a chemical and process engineering graduate, you know about food engineering, you know about food processing, and you want to start something new, and you may not be able to go to a very large level at the beginning, but you can start by looking at the market, because you have to be careful with your investments, because you don't have that much money in your mind, in your pocket. Sometimes the country's situation is even bad than now. So when you start something, you have to be very, very careful. So you have to think about the feasibility a lot, especially the technical feasibility. Because when we start something new, you need to realize about the processing equipment. Now, we design processing equipments, yes, on paper, but when we go into industries, we really hardly make things out of scratch. We usually look at the specification based on our design considerations, and then maybe we buy something from the outside market. But at this moment, that luxury, we won't be having that luxury. So when we consider about the technical feasibility of any new food manufacturing industry, we have to think about blending the human resources as well as the mechanical equipment, especially for food processing, because all these food processing activities, they can actually happen in a kitchen. Okay, now we say kitchen, but actually if you use the technical terms, it's actually a food processing environment, because you take raw materials, you process food, and you create a cooked food, which is actually processed food, right? So in that sense, you realize that some of these activities actually can be done by human resources, like sorting, even size reduction, these kind of things. You don't need like really specific mechanical equipment. And at the same time, you can actually use your knowledge to use whatever resources available and design and manufacture some of very simple equipment. So that's again a possibility. Depending on your batch sizes, depending on your available investment, you can also think about that also. But there should be a blend between this human resources and mechanical equipment. That way you can cut down some of the money that you need to invest at the first stages of your industry. And then choosing right batch sizes and packaging solutions, because packaging material might be another big problem that we face in the future. So you have to think about what sort of sustainable options that we can do. By sustainable, I'm not saying it's always should be biodegradable. There should be a continuous supply of packaging material or packaging solutions. But it also should be economical, because that's one of the key things that you are actually framed with. So you have to explore your options and think about the feasibility again. And then another important thing is to use regional and underutilized food resources, because sometimes the raw materials that come from other countries may not be available at that time, but even if it's available, it might be very expensive. But if you look at your around, I mean, if you go to the places where you live, you might see that there are a lot of regional and there are a lot of resources that people haven't not utilized up to their potential. There are a lot of functional foods in research at this moment. People are trying to explore their nutritious conditions and their herbal properties, medicinal properties, and all that. So if you look at these research papers, and you will realize that there are a lot of raw materials that you can use. And using those raw materials, you can create nutritious food products that will actually assure the food security of this country at this moment. So this is these are some of the underutilized food materials that I can see. But if you think about your regions, if you think about your districts, your living areas, I'm pretty sure you might be able to find more than these things. Now the situation is, some of these things are very they can be supplied continuously, and they grow without effort. Sometimes they are just wild grown food materials. It's just it's just a treasure, and we are not using that particular treasure at this moment. And then food formulations to efficiently use cooking energy sources, because there is a huge decline in cooking energy sources at this moment. We were we didn't feel like a luxury to have liquid petroleum at our homes, but at this moment it's a luxury to have, because some of the people, they have gone to firewood burning at this moment. So it's not actually something that should happen in a developing country. We should go forward, not go backward in the energy ladder. So this is one example, but may not be a popular opinion, but this is something that we used to make in our homes for roti. We mix flour and we mix coconut, and then we make this very basic kind of roti. And if you think about the processing technique that we are using, it's really energy inefficient and it's time consuming. But at the same product, you can actually add more into it. You can even add protein supplements, different kinds of meats and eggs into it, and you can create a different level of product. So you're using the same energy, but you have formulated the food to be more nutritious than the previous case, right? And this is the one I mentioned that may not be a popular opinion, because this seems, I mean, the food that we, this food we consider to be a luxurious thing, but if you think about in this way, now in this particular example, the second one, we actually playing with the dough. We are actually changing the dough by adding more ingredients to it. But if you think about this particular aspect, you can actually play with the dough, and you can also add other ingredients to the top of it. So there are two ways that you can include more nutritious content into this food. And if you think about the processing requirements, this require something like this. This is traditionally how we make it. And the pizza is actually made in oven like this, a closed system. And you can actually improve the efficiency. It may not be using, the picture may not be that clear. I think it's actually probably electricity, but you can design this particular system to be made out of electricity and then other LP gases. And also, if firewood is the only option, you can still design this particular cooking ware, cooking technique to be fueled by firewood still. But if you think about the traditional way, and if you think about this one, there is a clear difference in efficiency. So when you're going into a process like, or a processing industry, or maybe a community kitchen, you can choose these kind of efficient cooking techniques depending on the food material that you're using. And by blending the correct formulation of food and using the correct efficient cooking technique, that should be very helpful in processing sense. There's another thing that I want to mention, like when you see these kind of processed food, they actually go for large scale production. They always work with large batch sizes. They used to work with wider market, but because of the economical situation right now, the market can be broken. The market actually is brittle. Maybe they can face many problems at that point. But the thing is, if you want to attend, or if you want to serve a wider market, then you need to have these packaging materials as a preservation technique, because you need to store these things for a very long time. That's the way you extend this shelf life. That's how the big industries work. But if you think about the small scale industries, you can still use the packaging as a preservative technique, but doesn't have to be effective as the previous case. For example, you can get rid of this polymeric packaging materials and go into something like glass bottles and all, something like a sealed container. But the problem now is your storage time is very short. because you cannot keep on these things. And when you open the bottles, it means that you are going to expose this food to external conditions more often than the previous case. So if that's the case, now you cannot go for large batch sizes. Now you need to go for small and medium scale production. That's one of the things. And you need to go for small batch sizes. So that's, again, you need to think backward. Now you cannot go for wider markets. Now you have to think about local and regional market. So if you're looking for a food industry, if you're looking to start a food industry, maybe this is one of the ways that you need to think. So if you think about this concept, some people already using this concept. This is one of the examples. I mean, one of the things that I saw somewhere close to Israel, they have these kind of things already. They're trying to implement these kind of things. Instead of using individual wrapping for each product, they're using something like this. Now you can clearly see their batch sizes are very small. So once this is running out, they are making a new batch. So this is actually good for bakery industry. And if you think about the situation with Chungpan, it's a very sustainable concept because they're thinking about short-term storage, and they are working in small batch sizes, and they are only considering about the regional market. They're not going here and there. They're going in a very small area. So that's a very sustainable concept. And this is not only for bakery products, we may have to use this kind of concept for other products as well. So that's one way we can tackle the food security. Another very key aspect is the preservation of excess and seasonal harvest. This is something we haven't addressed. Many governments, many ministers, different ministries looking at different aspects of agriculture, but still we don't have a clear plan of preserving this excess food. That's why we see the fluctuation of vegetable prices. Like sometimes it goes up, and sometimes it's like cheap. Even there are no buyers to buy it. So this is really imbalanced, and then we don't have any technique to tackle it. But as chemical and process engineers, we can suggest many things to help these things. Again, you don't have to think like national level. You can still think about like regional level, small scale, medium scale processing centers. You don't have to go for like very large processing industries, because these are seasonal things. So these things will run for season, and then even mobile processing centers can even work at this stage. So if you think about the processes like dehydration, concentration, and even traditional techniques that we use in our homes that can be scaled up to preserve some of these excess harvest, that can be very helpful. That can actually create. Now, if you look at these kind of products, like these dehydration techniques have developed in these times very efficiently. Sometimes you can dehydrate many of the materials without losing the quality, and even the medicinal quality, without losing the medicinal quality a lot. So that again creates an opportunity to something that can be exported even. For example, we have a large community of Sri Lankans in many of the cities in Sri Lanka. So if you think about Okay, where did we stop? Sorry about the technical glitch. So the community kitchens. So we're starting to see these kind of posts happening. I mean, there's one thing about community kitchens. Again, we need to pitch at the right time. Maybe this is not the right time. This is maybe just the time to plan it. And if you think about these community kitchens, again, I've already used the word food processing center, food processing system for kitchen. So this is again a food processing center at this point. I mean, that's again, you can see a lot of unit operations happening. That right there is size reduction. You have a larger particle and you use cutting tools to reduce the size. So that's one of the unit operations that you guys learn at some point of your uh, curriculum or some of the courses. So you take the large piece and you cut it. But if you think about it, if you think about bringing in efficiency factor to this particular point, that guy has to cut these onions using a knife. But what if we use more than one knife to cut the same onion? So now you can cut the onion like 5 times or 6 times faster than the previous case. So this is basically about creating an simple mechanical equipment that has more than one blade. So you can easily chop, or you can easily reduce the size of this raw materials within short amount of time. So that's, again, you can bring in your knowledge, bring in your knowledge about efficiency or knowledge about design into these kind of like simple aspects that are happening in the society. So that's individual level, you can contribute to those things. Even if you look at these pictures, these are like firewood burners. And if you think about the energy efficiency of those things, they are very poor. Now, community kitchens should address the problems that we are having in the in the food processing at the moment, because there is a shortage of cooking fuels, there is a shortage of foods. So if that's the case, then the community kitchen should address that problem. They should not follow a process that is again energy inefficient. So that's the key idea. If you're not following that, if you're not addressing that point, then it means that is not an unsustainable, that is not a sustainable process to happen. So that's why we see some challenges that can be faced by this communication, especially the waste generation. Think about the amount of waste you generate when you process food at your home for 5 people. Now, if you think about community kitchen, you are talking about like 100, 150 mouths to be fed. Then how much waste would be generated? What should we do to this waste? There should be a clear plan. So they come, I mean, there is huge potential for chemical and process engineers to come in and help in these kind of places, like human resources. As I mentioned, the processing equipment, if you can design simple materials, simple equipment, that would be really helpful. Even the food safety, food distribution, these has to be done in a very systematical manner. Otherwise, we are not using these resources and time in not that efficient way. And all these things are actually helping the local food security. But there's one thing about food processing. This is something that I truly believe that we need to find that authentic Sri Lankan food product. We have already we already have things like Ceylon tea and Ceylon cinnamon, that they usually share a place in the world market. Yes, that's true. But we need to find more authentic products that can assure a significant share in the world market. That sort of product can come from your expertise. You can think about different types of processing technologies, and one of the key things that you need to understand is that the product has to be very unique, and product has to be come from the Sri Lankan context, and maybe should not be found anywhere else in the world. For example, a product that is unique to Sri Lanka, it could be grown only a region in Sri Lanka, or sometimes in a season. I mean, not only regional, but also seasonal. Sometimes it could be endemic to Sri Lanka. Even if that particular product is like pollinated by an endangered animal, that is actually a key point of marketing. If we can market something like that, if we can take the attention of people who like those kind of things, that would be a huge advantage in selling this kind of a market. And sometimes unique sensorial properties, like something that is unmatchable by any similar kind of product. If we can find something like that, that would be a huge advantage in this point. And also we should think about catering to a larger community base. larger consumer base. So when you think about a beverage or a product that can actually used by different age ranges, those kind of products will have a huge potential. And also the continuous production capability, even though it's seasonal, even though it's the production happening at a part of the year, but if the consumers know that the product will come to the market again and again, then that will create a confidence in the consumers to buy this unique product that coming from Sri Lanka, just like the Ceylon tea and Ceylon cinnamon. I think we need more products like that, and I hope a person who are in this audience can come up with a product like that. This is my assumption. I'm thinking an alcoholic beverage product made of a locally grown or something like wild type fruit species or subspecies that is endemic to Sri Lanka can be a suitable product for this. Think about this. I mean, this is one way of creating a space in the export market. I'm so excited about this, and I feel like we have resources to do that. And that's one of the key things. That's one of the key things that you guys can contribute to. Now let's talk about energy sufficiency. Now we I mean, I don't have to explain about the bad situations we are having with energy sources. But when we talk about the oil refinery, that's one of the best places for a chemical and process engineer in Sri Lanka to work. But unfortunately, that very place was actually misused or underused. And that was one of the turning points in this energy crisis that I believe. And maybe you can do a case study or something in the faculty level. Sometimes you can, maybe for a next isoTalks, you can talk to a chemical and process engineer from the refinery and ask to talk more about these situations. They can tell you more about these things, because you have to realize that some of these fuel purchases, some of the ships that are coming with fuels, they're actually refined fuel, which actually costs more compared to the crude oil refining. That's actually the true case. Since I had to deliver this talk, I actually talked to one of the person who are working in the refinery, and he mentioned that even at this moment, even with the current condition, like 2 weeks ago, they did the calculation, then they still see that running the refinery is still a possibility and still economical than bringing this refined fuel. So what's wrong with that? It's actually some of the bad policies that we have, that not actually we, the rulers have taken over the time. Some of the refinery expansions and modifications, they should be done accordingly and also timely. There is a time we actually visited the refinery. I think should be in 2011 or 2012. There was a discussion about installing a cracker. I'm not exactly sure which type of a cracker. If as far as I remember, it was like a thermal cracker, because they were having heavy fractions a lot, so they want to break it down and make more light fractions. But that didn't happen. The expansion didn't happen, and even at this moment, their capacity can meet 30% of the national energy demand. They are even the engineers, they are supplying. I mean, they are suggesting more and more expansion plans and different kinds of development plans to the refinery, but that's not going to work. That's very unfortunate, because that's one of the key chemical and process industries in this country. So that's one way, because you can actually talk about these kind of topics as chemical and process engineers. You can bring these hidden information to the general public, because that will create a rational requirement in those people, because rather than just cursing the rulers, now they can have these facts and go to the rulers and talk to them with these facts. Now, normal people don't understand some of these calculations or some of these reactions. I mean, sometimes they may not be able to understand these complex things, but as chemical and process engineers, they have the ability to crack down these kind of things and talk to other people, educate them, and try to solve some of these policy related problems. by educating other people. So that's something that you guys can do, maybe through a case study, maybe through different kinds of workshops, discussions, but anyway, you can actually work on that. I already mentioned about the energy ladder. We were there actually. Most of us were using fossil fuels like LPG, and suddenly now we are going down the energy ladder. But if you think about it, there are many clean energy sources that were researched in the universities, even in your faculty, even in your department. Different biogas products from different types of waste: solid waste, fruit waste, vegetable waste, municipal waste, different kinds of clean energy sources that you have studied, that you have researched to some extent. But at this moment, those research has to be used at some point. Maybe not all of them are commercially viable, but at least the ones that are very fruitful, ones that are very potential, those things may need a very simple characterization or a very simple experiment to be proved to be feasible. Then do that and bring that clean energy to the table rather than going back to the firewood. So in that sense, the universities and faculties may have a responsibility in that sense. At least if you don't have support from your authorities or the administration, you can at least bring back some of the highlights of your previous research and educate the people that we still have things like this. We still have options like this, rather than going back to just cutting forests and burning them, and using as firewood. And I was looking at some of the examples to show whether we have some domestic level biogas units. This is the only one I could found, but if there are other units, of course, please share them. I mean, the ones that are actually made with Sri Lankan expertise. But this is again like 42,500 rupees. That's again, I think, a price that was price before like 1 or 2 years. So I'm not exactly sure what's the price now. But again, it's not affordable to some of the people. I'm not saying that everyone should create biogas, but people who have the potential should at least consider about that thing as a solution, not using I mean, not going down the energy ladder. At least they should try. For example, if you think about the LPG gas queue, who are the people who are bringing more cylinders to the queue? People who are running restaurants, hotels, those kind of people. They are bringing like 7, 8, 10 cylinders to the queue, and that will actually cut down uh, some of the domestic level. Um, some of the people who are actually buying like 1 cylinder for their domestic level cooking, they actually don't get the gas cylinder because of that particular thing. But if you think about a hotel or a restaurant, they have a lot of waste food, a lot of food waste that can be actually used to create these kind of biogases and other sort of like bioethanol or anything like that. So they have the potential, but they're not using that. I mean, they are not even using that. Maybe they don't have that kind of like guidance from someone else. So that guidance should be happen at least now. Otherwise we will be facing many issues related to the cooking fuel. And some of the popular examples, like we do have minerals in Sri Lanka, but unfortunately what we are doing is we are just mining it and then we send it as it is. We don't do anything called anything such as value addition. Because some of the tenders, if you see that if you see that this is actually a picture from 2018 that was actually about the news was about winning a tender. So some Arab based company, they won the tender. This is actually to scrape some of the sands and take it. I mean, there's no value addition. No value addition. You just cut it and you bring it to somewhere else, and then those guys will value add to it and they will send it to a higher price. Why can't we do that? Now this is a long-term project that I understand. This should be started very long time ago. But even at this moment, it's not that I mean, it's not that late. I mean it's late, but it's not that late. Still you can ask for some of the expertise like technical assistance from other countries, and then you can also talk with even universities and research institute that are actually working with these kind of metals or materials. They can gather this expertise and try to value add this material, try to add value to these materials, and then try to export it, because that's again going to be a huge opportunity in the export market rather than sending just the raw material. I'll give you like a couple of examples. The vein graphite. Now, all this is actually a extract from their website, Ceylon Graphite website. All currently available commercial vein graphite is mined in Sri Lanka. That's actually one key form of graphite, and the purity is more than 90%, so which is accepted as very good in that sense. But rather than sending this graphite for lubricants or to be used at electrodes for different kinds of batteries, but rather than sending out those graphite as it is, we can convert it to a graphene or any graphene related material. That would create a huge opportunity, huge potential to bring in more foreign exchange in that sense. If you think about different kinds of graphene family members, they have wide range of applications: electronics, biology, water treatment, energy storage, different kinds of applications. But we are not using that. And we are sitting on a treasure, but we are not particularly using that resources up to a potential. But if you think about it, some of the I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least some efforts are taken by Slintech and other research institute, and there should be support from national level. There should be support from other okay there should be support from other levels of the ruling authorities to support these kind of efforts, because this is for sure dollars that can bring into the country, but we're not using it. So even if that's the situation right now, the chemical and process engineers, they have the ability to talk about these technical factors, these technical capabilities, technical feasibility of these kind of processes, and they can actually educate the rule makers. And also sometimes you can start your own thing in small and medium scale. Now, this is something good for a medium scale industry. This is a gemstone, a form of sapphire called Geuda. And if you're from Ratnapura and some gem related area, you might know about this thing already. Now, this is according to some of these stats, like 70-80% of the gems found in Sri Lanka belong to this kind of Geuda varieties. Now, this one is actually doesn't have that much of value. But what actually happens is around 1970s, they found that if you can heat this one into very high temperatures, like currently they're talking about temperatures about 1500, 1800. If you do that heat treatment, you can actually bring more color into this stone. Now, if you bring more color into this stone, that will actually create a different level of market. It may not be as qualified as the actual sapphire, but still it will create a huge market. But the problem is this heat treatment process is very poorly optimized. Now, different gemstone traders, they actually tried their own recipes. They tried their own gas mixtures, because this is actually a redox reaction. It's actually a redox reaction. Those reactions are well known, but the control part of this process is not poorly understood or not very well explained with a scientific background. If someone can study these things, and if someone can create a very solid a way of doing this kind of heat treatment, that would create a huge potential, that would create a huge advantage or huge industry that can bring more foreign exchange into this country. And there's another treasure that we haven't used up to its potential, which is the marine resources of this country. We have a considerably large oceanic area compared to the landmass we have. And that particular landmass, particular ocean resources has things like fisheries resources, seaweeds. Now, if you think about the research and development, there are a lot of research that are talking about the potential of seaweeds in many applications. Food applications, food packaging applications, medicines, different kinds of composites, a lot of applications of seaweeds. And one of the things that you can face in these kind of implications is uh, you might have like sensitive areas in the marine sites, but then you can think about you can think about the environmental feasibility and select like carefully select the sites that you can implement industries that are related to these aquatic products. So that's one of the key things that we haven't exploited, and I hope that some of the research and some of the activities that are done in universities can also look at the potentials of marine resources that we have in our country. There's a term that is used by experts, blue ocean economy, and people say that should be the future of this country, that could be the future of this country, which is one way could be true, because again, because it's something that we haven't used up to the potential. Role of universities and faculties and also research institute is key at this point, because I don't know, as students you may not be aware of these things, but if you look at some of the decisions taken by our research councils, they're actually taking critical reactions to these economic situations. Some of the researchers, they actually face difficulties in finding chemicals, they can't find equipment, some consumables are missing, so that some of the research are delayed unprecedentedly. But now my point is, okay, I understand that's actually a situation, but what about the remaining funds? What about research that are like nearly finished, or some non-commercialized, and the research with non-commercialized findings? Like, if it's actually helped the economy development in any way, I think the country should come up with countries and universities should come up with a plan to support these kind of researches. In my opinion, some of the key areas of studies that include this particular category includes energy sources, for example, biogas, solid waste to electricity, solar, wind related researches, fertilizer. It could be organic, it could be chemical, it could be like waste upcycling type of fertilizer making, but still those kinds of researches should be helped in this level. Food products, for example, functional foods, and also, as I mentioned, seaweed products, because that's one huge potential thing. And then alternative and novel processing techniques, rather than using this energy consuming processing techniques, we can go for alternative techniques using non-thermal and other kind of novel techniques, water and wastewater treatment techniques, recycling processes. These are the things that the university should support at this moment, because even as an undergraduate student, you should be thinking about these kind of researches that would help some sort of commercial product that actually help the economic development of this country. So that is a huge potential that universities and research institutes hold at this moment. I have to say the commercial viability can be a compulsory thing to, because the funds are limited. Yes, that I understand, that we clearly understand. So you can make the commercial viability a compulsory thing. So you make something out of it, and then it has to be commercially viable. That we can discuss, but that's just an opinion. Because if you think about the ideas that we create in undergraduate level or research level, now some of them are original ideas, true, but the thing is, some of them will not pass the feasibility study that we do, and that what makes them innovations. But it doesn't mean that your invention should go to the garbage bin. You should modify it, you should convert it to a commercially viable application, then you can use it for something else at some point of the situation. I'm not sure about the time, but I think I'm going over time at this moment. So if there's limitation with the time, just let me know somehow. But I'm almost finished at this moment. I use this particular thing about cleaner production, because this is something you can implement in the industrial level. So if you are a chemical and process engineer already working in an industry, or if you are going to work in an industry, this is something you can do in your industries. Now, the cleaner production specifically talks about the negative, I mean, reducing the negative impact of uh, on environment. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, they also talk about the economic aspects. So that's why I put this cleaner production at this particular point, not only because of the environmental aspects, but also the economical aspects. So if you think about the step ladder representation of this industry environmental management, cleaner production stays up there, which is indicating that it's a good potential approach to be used at this point, especially in industries. And in a situation like this, in a situation of this economic contracting to an unprecedented level, now you need to reduce your operating cost, and cleaner production implementation could be one way of doing that. So that's why you should, maybe if you are working in industry, maybe you should talk to your superiors and say, okay, maybe let's try to do some good housekeeping practices, and then try to cut down the energy waste, and maybe try something like that. So you can cut down the cost, and then you can improve the process as well. Sometimes you can improve the product, sometimes you can optimize the product, or sometimes optimize the process. So those kind of things will help you to bring in more money rather than spending them to these kind of unsustainable or not that clean production processes. So that's something that you can do in industrial level. So I'll finish my speech with two less popular opinions. One of the things that I want to mention is the control skilled migration. Now, because of the country's situation, many chemical and process engineers, not only those people, but also educated people, they will actually try to migrate to other countries. They are seeking for better jobs, especially for better salaries, and ultimately they want a better life than this. That's understandable. That's clearly understandable. But the thing is, if you can use this particular sort of like a disappointment into the country's use, you can actually start something like a controlled skilled migration program. Because even though some people they are confident enough to find their own opportunity and go to a different country to work or live, sometimes there may be people they refraining from migration due to financial or personal commitments that they have in this country. So these kind of difficulties, but they want to go to other countries, but they have difficulties. So if you can, if the policy makers can create a program to tackle these kind of aspects, if they can create a program that allows migration but in a controlled manner, they can actually help the economy in one way. Because the people who are going there and working can bring in dollars to this country. That's the basic idea. There has to be some commitment to be done. There has to be some arrangements to be done. But at this point, we know that there are other countries that have a lot of good chemical and process industries. Even India has a better chemical and process industry than us. They have a lot of raw materials. They are using those raw materials, and countries like that will have a lot of opportunities. So that in national level, we can collaborate with those countries, and not only with countries, but we can also collaborate with very wider industries that are actually looking for these kind of workforce. So we can carefully manage whoever the people that willing to migrate in that sense. Sometimes, if now we know that the chemical and process engineering workforce is like maybe passing out rate is like 120 per year. Okay, that's fine. But maybe the universities or the chemical and processing industry departments can actually create more courses and related uh, uh, course modules, or some maybe like diploma courses or certificate courses that actually give this industry specific technical proficiency to people who wants to migrate. So that would create another market for this migration program. So maybe you can design like 3 to 6 months program you extensively provide this proficiency in a quick manner, people that already has a certain background, and then you provide the language proficiency in another way. Now you create a skilled person who is going to migrate, and there should be sort of like legal provisions, like creating like contracts and agreements. Those kind of things should be figured out. But I'm saying that this is one of the things that we should consider at this moment. There can be other discussions, but that's one point. Now this is again a very unpopular opinion, but if you realize about the things that I mentioned for the past 50 minutes, many things require policy changes. But the thing is, there are no policymakers or rulers that can actually even understand these things. So I sincerely believe that professional or skillful people should go into politics more and more. And chemical and process engineers with that kind of ability and that kind of ideology about the current world, they should also think about joining politics at various levels. I'm not talking about like the dirty politics that we are seeing at this moment, but people who are really willing to help the country can also think about these kind of things, not just working under someone's industry, not just working under someone's rule. Maybe you can create your own persona, and you can even try to go into this kind of things, and then you can work towards the economic development with your knowledge in a different level, rather than the idiotic politics that we have at the moment. So this is again, I see as a very potential thing, not only for chemical and process engineers, but also for other skillful professional people to do at this particular moment. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but that I put it to complete the picture, because I mentioned many things that people cannot do at the individual level. Some of the things like even using natural resources, you individuals, I mean, we can talk and talk and talk. Sometimes we cannot do that best, because there should be a voice that could be heard. And someone who's in politics can be a voice that can be heard very well. So that's one of the key things. And I don't know if you have the potential. If you have the potential, just give it a go. That's my kind request. Okay, with that, I think I mentioned almost all the things that I want to mention at this moment, because this is actually a screwed up economy, and this rebuilding phase will be a huge task, enormous task. And I'm pretty sure that chemical and process engineers can take a huge share, a huge portion of this particular task. And I'm pretty sure if they will help this particular effort, and it will be a very fruitful effort, that I'm pretty sure. And if we can use those unused potential areas or potential natural resources of this country to a great extent with the use of chemical and process engineers, I'm pretty sure that we can get rid of this, whatever the chaos we are having right now. Not in 1 year, 2 year, but maybe in 5 years or 10 years. If we have a correct plan, if we have given the ideas to the educated people, and given the correct working space to the educated people like you guys, then probably we will see a light end of this, whatever the dark tunnel that we are going through right now. And you guys have a clear role in this, and I wish you good luck in that sense, and many senses. Wish you good luck for a better future, and we hope that whatever the situation that we are having right now will be sold out, and we let's hope that we can work together to bring everything back to the normalcy. And I know that we can do this. I'm pretty sure that we can do this, and I hope everyone will join, and everyone will get together with everyone else to this particular task. That's all from me, actually. And if there are other questions and all that, I'm happy to answer.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a very insightful discussion that we had, and surely, Dr. Pasan, we hope the same, that the situation that country is facing will end soon, and we are sure that as chemical and process engineering undergraduates, that we'll work hard in order to become good professionals in the industry and to seize the opportunities and always try to give out our best as professionals to end this economic crisis or to give our maximum support. So ladies and gentlemen, that was one insightful discussion that we had. So in the beginning I mentioned you to put your questions if you have any in the chat box. So I'm not seeing any questions, and also with the time restraints that we have, I hope I think that we'll have to move on with the session. So now, since it was an amazing session, how can we let you go, Dr. Pasan, without extending our gratitude to you? So for that, representing all the students who are gathered here and representing the department, students, Society of Chemical and Process Engineering students, I now invite the co-chair of this whole series, isoTalks, Milindu Gamage, to deliver the vote of thanks. Milindu, over to you.
Thank you, Sambil. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor, on behalf of the SCIPS, to propose the word of thanks speech to acknowledge the contribution of everyone who dedicated their time and energy to make this event a success. First, I would like to express my gratitude to our guest speaker, Dr. Pasan Chinthana Bandara, not only sparing his invaluable time for us to grace this occasion, but also for enlightening us with his commendable talk on the subject. Next, I would like to thank our beloved staff of Department of Chemical and Process Engineering for their contribution and their encouragement in all our efforts. But last but not the least, I thank all the participants who joined us today and all the committee members of the SCAPES for their contribution, without whom this event would not have been a success. Thank you all for your attention and stay safe. Over to you, Sandhu.
Thank you very much, Milindu. Co-chair of isoTalks, Milindu Gamage, once again. So with that vote of thanks, as every good thing must come to an end, this session is also coming to a beautiful end. So once again, I thank for that very insightful session, because I personally got to know a lot more than what I knew before, and my role in the upcoming future as well. So thank you very much, sir, and we hope that you will keep in touch in the future tenors as well. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the chapter 7 of isoTalks, organized by Society of Chemical and Process Engineering students of University of Peradeniya. So this is not the end. We hope to deliver this kind of amazing sessions in the future as well. So we hope that you all will stay together with us. So until that, we are ending the chapter 7 and hope you'll have a safe day. Good night. Thank you very much.